What's a massive scandal, controversy that people seem to have forgotten about? DuPont, still active company, when producing Teflon dumped loads of bad chemicals into the water and Teflon was poisoning people all over the world, giving them 6 known types of cancer. They covered it up for decades. Crazy how evil some companies are. The family is weird as F too. Pierre Samuel DuPont, the founder of the family, encouraged cousin marriage to preserve the family's pure blood. They practiced this for decades and there are rumors that they still do to this day. Now my blood is filled with microplastics. Funny how things work out. I still feel like Equifax got off way too easy. People should have been arrested. That breach was a direct result of negligence. Edit. Wow. This comment blew up. Thank you everyone. Same here. The more that came out about it, the more shameful the details. I had people in my social circle get really uppity that I was annoyed by the CSO being a effing music major. Before that doozy of a breach, she'd been CSO while there was like 34 lesser breaches. Her LinkedIn job history was also not geared to clever. She probably made more with her golden parachute after that F up than I'll make in my entire life too. Just before the breach was announced, the Equifax vice president of global client security left Equifax to become CISO of the largest healthcare provider in Missouri. He's still there. I'm no longer there. I have opinions. I always thought the timing was highly suspect. The BP oil spill. In 2015 I drove by a packed BP and told my buddy, wow, BP is lucky everyone forgot, and he said, forgot what? In German there was this rhyme, I think that's why I didn't forget about it. Wer wohnt in näher Nannes ganz tief im Meer? Dank BP niemand mehr. Which roughly translates to, who lives in a pineapple deep in the sea? Nobody anymore thanks to BP. So yeah, I've had that rhyme stuck in my head for a long time every time I heard the SpongeBob intro. Wow, that translates surprisingly well. Haha, that's what I thought. It's the right amount of syllables and it rhymes. That McDonald's Monopoly sweepstakes? None of the big prize-winning pieces ever made it to stores. The guy in charge of randomly putting them on cups and cartons after production kept them and gave them to friends, splitting the winnings, for years. The documentary about it is a good watch. There's one FBI agent who worked the case and he's hilarious. Edit. It's called McMillions and it's currently on HBO Max, Hulu and YouTube TV in the U.S. Lots of people asking the same thing and I don't feel like replying to everyone individually. They screwed up one time and put the Southern-style chicken sandwich patty on a McChicken I ordered. Felt like I could have been in that documentary myself after that win. One time when I worked at McDonald's, the backline put Southern-style chicken on a McChicken sandwich to use up the leftovers from breakfast, back when they had the Southern-style chicken biscuit RIP. But the young girl who got the sandwich brought it back up the counter and told me I ordered a McChicken. But they gave me real chicken, so they had to remake it, haha. In 2016 South Korea had a political scandal in which the president Park Geun-hye was exposed for being controlled by a cult called the Eight Goddesses Cabal. South Korea was literally being ruled by a cult. Park was impeached. The protests that came from that were unreal. It was like all of Seoul rose up. Best part was how it came to light through such a stupid mistake. They found an unlocked iPad that revealed it all, and I think a guy that was sleeping with the woman that was controlling Park released details. I was there when it went down. It was a wild time. Wasn't there also something to do with her lack of response to the disaster in which hundreds of students drowned in a sinking ship in 2014? It was later revealed that she was getting plastic surgery done at one of the facilities the cult owned on the same day the disaster happened. I might be wrong, but I assumed that was the initial reason. Boy George, he was jailed for 15 months for imprisoning a Norwegian male escort after a nude photoshoot, in what the judge called a premeditated, callous and humiliating assault. He basically tortured him, and now he hosts TV shows in Australia. Darn, I thought Boy George was dead. Assassination of Haiti's president. Shoot, the stories behind it are so wild. A Florida pastor was accused of orchestrating the assassination. Some of the assassins were Instagramming their way as if on vacation all the way to the Dominican Republic. Gangs took over the country in the interim. The new president refusing really any real investigation. Just a crazy weird mess. 26 Colombian mercenaries associated with paramilitarism and narcotráfico were part of the operation to assassinate him. Just layers and layers of corruption and international racketeering. Wild stuff. In the Philippines, the dictatorship and the extrajudicial kings as well as the corruption under the presidency of Ferdinand Marcos seem to be forgotten already. People here even elected his son as the president. From what I understand, kids in the Philippines are actively taught in school that the Marcos regime was really good for everyone. They most definitely are now. They're going through the textbooks and banning those critical of his father's regime. The first thing one of my history lecturers at university said in our class on resistance and conformity in N Germany, best class I ever took, if anyone ever tells you history isn't an important topic, just look at the N regime. What was the first topic they changed in schools? History. Control the narrative of the past. Control the story. Next, shift the narrative of the future to what you want it to be. Unintentionally long edit. I appreciate the passion of all the Americans here. I just need to point out the GOP wasn't even in my mind when writing this comment. Not everything is about America. This focus on what happened in history applies to here, Australia, and my home country, New Zealand, where the narratives of settlement, terra nullius, aus, indigenous persecution arising from horrific prejudice, and the reticence to acknowledge the New Zealand Wars, NZ, previously known as the Maori Land Wars, only recently given a day of commemoration, are two local examples of wanting to spin a narrative to make the settlers and persecutors look better. Don't have to look far to see more examples. Japan, comfort women. China, too many to list, honestly, but Tank Man tells the story. And India, Pakistan, Kashmir and its origins. Every country has myths that powerful people want to write into history to remake it in the image that benefits them. America is not unique in this, but perhaps could benefit from looking more closely at the outcomes of the Civil War, where the Reconstruction never truly reconstructed, yet the narrative is that was then. It was about slavery. Was it, though? The results of the Civil War still bleed into the present day, and to say the war was just about slavery avoids the wider conversation about institutional prejudice and vicious white nationalism under the guise of faith. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's commit to being students of history, and questioning the sources we see. Who wrote the record? Whom does it benefit? And what did they include or leave out? That's a good place we can all begin wherever we are. Politicians cashing out for huge profits right before COVID was widely publicized and the stock market tanked. They made millions and millions as millions of people lost millions. And their lives. I'm still pissed about it. I want them fired and I want charges brought against them regardless of which side of the aisle they sit on. There's a guy you can follow on TikTok that shows you all of Nancy Pelosi's stock moves. She rarely loses, FYI Beinvita. I dislike that this is actually hilarious. Smart AF though. Airlines getting bailed out by taxpayers during crisis and with executives still taking huge bonuses. The quality of airlines significantly deteriorated because they don't want to compress profit by paying more to hire more and expand flight offerings again to pre-pandemic levels. My favorite was when they took the money they were struggling so hard for and did mass stock buybacks. Love that when our money gets used for that instead of protecting fellow citizens' jobs. I like how baggage fees was a temporary thing to help out after 9/11. Well, I'll be. Still F those bag fees and those bailouts. There was a time you didn't have to pay for baggage fees? Those Turpin siblings that escaped being chained to their beds by their SH-type parents? Happy ending, right? Yeah, no. Turns out their foster parents ended up abusing them even worse and now a bunch of them are suing. Edited to add, I'm not American and this update did not make international news at all. Nobody I've spoken to about this knew of the update. Right? And they can't get the money that was donated for them. One of them applied to get some of the money for a bicycle and was denied. By whom? Who controls the money? I'm sure it's a court-appointed guardian. One of the biggest scam opportunities there is. And it's the most heinous because they're only appointed to vulnerable people with no one else who can be taken advantage of. The NYC mayor's wife misplaced a whole lot of money and nobody seems to care. Edit, Warren Wilhelm, more commonly known as Bill de Blasio, appointed his wife who then proceeded to lose $850 million. Edit 2. It's only $850 million. Anyone could have misplaced that. What can you even buy with that? One banana? I bet they'd find that money if they just checked the banana stand. Recycling. You'd be amazed and disgusted at how much stuff you think you are recycling that your municipalities are shipping off to other countries just so they can dump it in the ocean for you. We know this is happening too, but because we're disconnected from it we just ignore it. Edit. A word. Also edit. Wow, this blew up. And well after this post hit popularity. Thanks for awards people. Call your local GATA and push to have better programs in place. Ban single-use plastics. Email your fast food chains to turn their lids into drinkable lids, etc. So many plastic items cannot be recycled. Paper recycling works great. Plastic is as low as 5% in some places. Confirmed. I do it for a living. Can you speak on what is required by us, as SH-tie as it is that the blame is on the consumer in the first place, to make items recyclable? I know a lot of people who just throw leftover spaghetti jars in the bin still full of old sauce and think they are doing their part. but I think things need to be cleaned out and have labels removed and such, right? Otherwise it takes too much effort by the recycling company and gets tossed. That some politicians on both sides of the aisle got richer off of stocks because prior knowledge of the pandemic. It was in the news for maybe a day or two, then memory hold. In the UK, a lot of our MPs got rich off pandemic decisions they made. Weirdly not brought up when they are slagging each other off ATM. I guess because if one brings it up it'll just be cancelled by the other person as they've all done it, lol. The various mass killings going on in Asia and Africa right now. No one seems to care unless it's a slow news week, which hasn't happened in a few years with the current political storm in America, Europe. This is so true. Every once in a while a larger story like the Bangladesh student protests gets attention. But overall, you never hear about these things. I remember a few months ago a post on World News about the atrocities in Ethiopia being posted. It was the only item on the front top of the page that was unrelated to the Ukraine war. Pilot truck stop stole around $250 million from their customers. The owner was never really penalized for it and owns the Cleveland Browns. Edit: I used to work for the company, so I have a lot of knowledge on the situation. The $250 million number is an estimated amount based on my personal information. 1. Amount publicly paid back to customers over $50 million. 2. Fine paid to federal government was $92 million. 3. Many cases were also settled for undisclosed amounts. 4. The company was still eligible to receive a biofuel rebate from the government for more than they were penalized for. This allowed them to continue with business as usual. Edit 2. I want to state that I do not have any undiscovered evidence in this case. The specific amount of money stolen by pilot Flying J will likely never be fully disclosed. There has been some dispute in the discussion about my claim of $250 million. The criticism is fair. The figure I presented was my own educated guess. It should not be taken as fact. The case has been settled for a few years now and the public information is available online. While the amount stolen is disputed, there is no doubt that the company purposefully committed a crime against their own customers. They systematically stole money for years. It was a sophisticated and widespread practice within the company. They, specifically the owners, were able to walk away from the situation with no real consequence. Maybe having to own the Browns was his penalty. Till the owner of these truck stops is Hank Scorpio. The financial crash of 2008 and how all of the individuals responsible saw little to zero consequences of their actions, which destroyed global economics, allowing them to continue in their roles or similar, who are now orchestrating new schemes that see the rich get richer and the working man more marginalized. Edit: firstly, thanks for the upvotes, I appreciate you. Secondly, thanks to those that are pointing out that no actual laws were broken in 2008. I know, dudes, but that in itself is kind of the biggest crime there is. Countless regulations were breached through unethical and immoral practices that were purely designed for very one-sided financial gain. The powerful, greedy banks and their investors profited from predatory products that targeted low-income consumers. They literally preyed on the vulnerable. To suggest that because no actual laws were broken so nobody deserved threshold have been prosecuted is wild. The law by design failed in and after 2008, and those same individuals and their protégés and predecessors are doing the same thing now. They just call it something different. Lastly, I get it. The consumers of these outrageously unregulated, non-compliant and unethical products had a part to play in the collapse of the housing market and wider global economic crash. Self-certifying loans they had no means to repay. I get it. They were greedy idiots too. The point is, though, they should have never had access to these opportunities in the first place, and the root cause of the '08 crash is those at the top, not the bottom. One guy went to jail. 1. The fact more people aren't absolutely enraged over this is baffling to me. Especially after The Big Short came out and made what happened known in an accessible way for a lot more people to understand exactly what went on. And that guy didn't go to jail for causing the financial crisis. Geez, was just pissed at an employee who left. Exactly. Every time I see that movie I can't help but think that would have been an excellent time to bring back hangings in the public square. I'm mostly joking, but also, how do they get away with destroying people's lives and face no consequences so they can just go do it again? Animal scandal in Berlin Zoo. In 2008, news surfaced that many of the zoo's animals may have been sold for slaughter. Green Party politician Claudia Hammerling, backed by several animal rights organizations, accused the zoo's director, Bernhard Blaskiewicz, of delivering tigers to China to be killed for potency DS and selling a pygmy hippopotamus and a family of Asiatic black bears for slaughter. Hammerling also said that more than 100 animals had disappeared from the zoo. Blaskiewicz denied the allegations. How can hundreds of animals be missing, and you just deny it? What kind of response is that? Hey, $1. Your zoo is missing hundreds of animals. Nah. Okay. Understandable. Have a good day. They're napping right now. You just missed them. They're in the inside part. The FBI knew the pedophile Larry Nassar was a harasser-ing child gymnasts and allowed him to continue for years. They went so far as to falsify the testimony of the victims. No one at the FBI has been punished. Nassar was sentenced in 2017. Why the F does the FBI keep covering up for pedophiles? Asking the right questions. I know someone who went to gymnastics with a few of those girls, and they had been reporting it to their parents for years. And the parents still let them see the dude? Obviously this is a failure on so many levels. But if my kid said that SH to me, it'd be knocking out some teeth and they would have never been near that F-er again. Everything going on with Epstein. Also, Scientology is still around and Shecky Miscavige hasn't been seen in years. I am healthy, happy, and alive. Boom boom. Oh, Debbie dead. Debbie real dead. Nestlé and the baby formula crisis. Edit. I understand that this isn't the best source, but it's a good general overview of what the worldwide impact of this crisis was. Edit. RedSuits has recommended that any future parents watch the documentary The Business of Being Born because it helped open our eyes to what rights we had during pregnancy and labor. Hopefully this can help someone else, too. Please recommend it if you know anyone who might be interested. RF Nestlé. Wells Fargo Bank opening BS accounts and submitting credit card applications on behalf of their customers, without their knowledge or consent. I'm actually a customer with them and have been for years, so for all I know they did that to me. But all I ever got was a couple emails about how they're really a good company with good people and that doesn't reflect their values or some such crap like that. I think they ended up firing a lot of people, and executives who knew about it were fined millions of dollars. But I mean, if the practice went that high, it must have been widely known. Edit. Wow. Thank you for the gold. This became one of my most popular comments ever, lol. Seriously look into moving to a credit union. Wells Fargo has so many examples of shady, unethical, and in some cases illegal business practices that go beyond the fake account scandal. I can't wrap my head around how they still have customers when there's so many alternatives to working with them. Wow. That's a lot worse than I thought, lol. To be fair, I was actually a customer at a much smaller regional bank that WF took over, and never went to them on my own. But yeah, I need to find SMTH else. In 2008, when banks got bailed out with our money and the CEOs got bonuses. The way I see it, they created like stupid amounts of projected income for themselves that eclipsed the sum total of all the money being made legitimately by a factor of something like 10, derivatives and the like, and then when it all vanished, because it was impossible to achieve, the government just printed it out for them and gave it to them. Cambridge Analytica. They used social media and social sciences to manipulate entire countries. They helped facilitate Brexit and cause a huge cultural divide in the US. I think it's new kind of warfare. That documentary was the single scariest thing I've ever seen, and I've seen some SH, and no one talks about it. What's the documentary name? The Great Hack on Netflix. MP File Dossier. A bunch of UK politicians were caught borrowing children for an orphanage for all the unspeakable things you can imagine. Another politician managed to weave himself into this circle consisting of around 20 members and took down names, dates, locations and victims. He then handed off this book to the Home Office, British CIA, who then handed it to the police, who then lost it. No action was taken. The case has been reopened 5 times since, and each conclusion has always been we lost the book. And we're not going to investigate it ourselves because I think this circle is still going on and the police are being paid off to never investigate it. Which MP was this? And when was this? I'll copy that second link because it asks you to register to continue reading. Senior political and police figures knew about child Suala linked to Westminster but turned a blind eye to it amid a culture of cover-up. An inquiry has found political institutions significantly failed in their responses to allegations of child SA for decades by actively shielding and protecting perpetrators and covering up allegations. The independent inquiry into child Suala has concluded. According to the inquiry, several highly placed people in the 1970s and 1980s, including Sir Peter Morrison MP and Sir Cyril Smith MP, were known or rumored to be active in their Suala interest in children and were protected from prosecution in a number of ways, including by police. Former Metropolitan Police Officer Robert Glenn told the inquiry his team had enough evidence to prosecute Sir Cyril Smith, a former Liberal MP, in the 1970s for Suala offences against young boys, but he claims the investigation was thwarted by senior officers who said it was too political. The report also claims Liberal Party members were likely to be aware of allegations against Smith but did nothing to inhibit his political progress. A person waits for a train at King's Cross Station as union members take part in a fresh strike over jobs, pay and conditions. The party leader at the time, Lord David Steele, allegedly admitted to the inquiry that he assumed Smith had committed the offences alleged in a Private Eye article but took no action because it happened before he was even a member of my party. In the late 1980s, allegations arose that Sir Peter Morrison, the Conservative MP for Chester, had been caught by police harassing a 15-year-old boy on a train at Crewe. The report claims senior officials within the Conservative Party knew about allegations concerning Morrison for years but did not pass them on to police. Instead, he became Margaret Thatcher's parliamentary private secretary in 1990 and was knighted a year later. Thatcher was aware of rumours about Morrison but did nothing. Former Cabinet Secretary Lord Armstrong claimed, a vivid picture of corruption in central London in the 1960s, 1970s and 1980s was portrayed by several witnesses. The inquiry report said, this included the cruising of expensive cars around Piccadilly Circus, by those viewing boys and young men, who would hang around the railings known as the meat rack to be picked up by older men and add. It added, the boys were described as being aged between 11 and 22 and from damaged backgrounds or runaways from the care system. Lord Tavern, a Home Office minister in 1966, described a meeting with the then Home Secretary, Roy Jenkins, and the then Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Joe Simpson, during which Sir Joe remarked that there were several cottages in Westminster which we don't investigate because they are frequented by celebrities and MPs. The report said, while not specifically about the soiree of children, the inquiry said this was an example of a policy giving special treatment to persons of prominence and of deference towards those in power at Westminster. During 3 weeks of public hearings last year, the inquiry heard from survivors, whistleblowers, cabinet ministers, MPs and police officers, among others. The inquiry did not find any evidence of an organized pedophile network at the heart of government. However, the report concluded there has been a political culture that values its reputation far higher than the fate of the children involved. It has made 5 recommendations, including ensuring all political parties have comprehensive safeguarding policies and procedures. The inquiry is also calling on the Cabinet Office to re-examine its policy on the posthumous forfeiture of honors. Professor Alexis J. Obe, chair of the inquiry, said, it is clear to see that Westminster institutions have repeatedly failed to deal with allegations of child soirée, from turning a blind eye to actively shielding as. A consistent pattern emerged of failures to put the welfare of children above political status, although we found no evidence of an organized network of pedophiles within government. We hope this report and its recommendations will lead political institutions to prioritize the needs and safety of vulnerable children.